Welcome back, everyone, to the #1 conspiracy podcast.
Let's play a real game.
Today's guest is Adam Lyons, an entrepreneur who saved more than 1,800 small businesses by teaching them how to massively scale, a business strategist, and a renowned dating and attraction coach, voted the #1 dating coach in the world 3 times.
When COVID first was announced, I got given a heads up and I get a phone call and they go, how many cold storage trucks can you get for us? So when somebody says they want to rent 200 cold storage trucks to store bodies, this is serious. Also, I'm about to get fact checked.
I was joking when I said conspiracy podcast, but this is going into it right away.
Yeah, it's only a conspiracy until someone proves it to be real. And actually, when we talk about social credit, there's people listening right now saying that's never going to happen. Those are the same people that told me there will not be a quarantine.
Door opens and literally 24 SWAT police officers come in.
But I just got hired to be a consultant for a multi-billion-dollar construction firm in Saudi Arabia. So when I go into a business, I'm looking for the weakest links, figuring out what I'm going to do with them, and then you sort of start raising awareness to the strongest links.
I keep saying this to my entire staff. We sell hard, but we deliver even fucking harder.
Get a team of 8 players, you can't go wrong. You know what's funny? McDonald's is one of the largest companies in the world. I've never walked into McDonald's and seen a team of 8 players.
We've been so brainwashed by the algorithms, by short-form gratification, the illusion of we don't have time.
I'm going to be so controversial right now, and I'm so sorry.
Welcome back, everyone, to the #1 conspiracy podcast. We've had so much tinfoil head conspiracy stuff on lately. It's so good.
Well, it's because you're traveling around America.
Yeah, that's during election season. I mean, this will do it. This will absolutely.
But it already started in Europe with Sterling Cooper. Shout out to him. He went. I'm like, you know what? Let's go. Let's lean into it. And then you come more. I had Marcel on, and it's
good.
It's good. But then, of course, as you picked me up, you went straight into conspiracy.
Here's the funny thing about conspiracies. It's only a conspiracy until it's proven. And I think, America is the king of the propaganda machine. The king. And when you live here, but you're originally from somewhere else, like the UK, you see the propaganda. And you're like, this is so obviously mass manipulation here. But there's not much you can do. You choose to live here, so you deal with it.
But it's funny. You're way too rich to be talking that much about conspiracy theories. That's you know what I mean.
Well,
that's
you think that,
juxtaposition.
but it does affect your everyday life. Like, I'll give you an example, right? A really good example was COVID. COVID was probably the biggest example. When COVID first was announced, I got given a heads up in about November, December 2019. I have a number of clients that work in interesting departments in industry, interesting things, which is why I often know things before a lot of other people. And they said, just so you know, there's going to be an 18-month quarantine starting next year. I'm on record. A buddy of mine actually wrote it down and went, no way. I said, I was warned 18 months. I got a heads up. Close friend of mine said, this will be 18 months. Get ready for it. So in January 2020, I started building out. You can go on my social media and you can see I started building out my farm and buying chickens. I've owned my farm for a long time. I never had chickens. And because I knew there'd be an egg shortage. Again, I was given a heads up by friends who, you know me, I have unique clients that pay me a lot of money to learn a lot of cool skills.
Yeah.
Some of those clients work in very unique departments and I get told things.
Damn.
And so I started buying chickens. I bought bidets for my house instead of toilet paper because I was warned there might be a shortage on toilet paper. I got a heads up on all of this, and I've got not only friends, I've got people that have actually written it down, taken screenshots, time dating it, confirming that I said there'd be 18 months. Yeah.
Why? Who said that?
So it was a buddy of mine. So it was 2 different friends. One of them works military in a department that I'm not going to talk about, and the other one is a futures stock trader.
Both in the States? If you can give that information.
They're both Americans. I'll say that.
Okay, got it.
Not in the States, both Americans.
All right.
And one of them said, the financial advisor said, the futures market is getting affected by COVID really badly in a way that usually means pandemic. And he goes, so I'm just telling you, the stock market is saying this looks like a pandemic. And then my military friend, or potentially previous military friend, very very careful how I'm wording this, because I don't talk about him very often. He was like, hey, just so you know, they're toying around with the concept of an up to 18-month lockdown. Just
Get out.
he's like, I know you live on a ranch. Just make sure you have, supplies.
I was joking when I said conspiracy podcast, but this is going into it right away.
I mean, it's a real thing. And then I can go on, right? So when it first came out, I was terrified of it. I got contacted by a client in New York City who does a lot of contracts with cleanup and with cold storage facilities out of Chicago. And I get a phone call and they go, how many cold storage trucks can you get for us? And so, you know me, I like doing sales, I do business. So when somebody says they want to rent 200 cold storage trucks to store bodies, I'm like, that's devastating. Everyone stay in the house, no one leave. This is serious. Also, I'm about to get a fat check, right? I was about to get paid a large sum of money. So I get the 200 trucks. I'm ready to send them to New York. I get a phone call. Don't worry about it. I'm like, what do you mean don't worry about it? They go, don't worry about it. I was like, did you find someone else? Like, who's my competitor? And they go, no, we just don't need them. I'm like, why not? And they said, it's not as bad as we thought. And the minute I heard that, that's like April 2020. I'm like, if they don't need extra cold storage facility in a place like New York that is not known for having a lot of storage, and the word from the hospital was, it won't be that bad. And you know, money talks. I don't want to hear your opinion. I don't want to hear what you say on the news. I want to see, where will you put your money? Like, if it's serious and you're worried about insurance claims and everything, and there's going to be a lot of people passing away, you're going to want cold storage facilities. You need them. If you suddenly don't need them and you didn't get them from anywhere else, what happens? So instantly I'm like, wow, that's wild. And then you start hearing other things from other clients. I got a client who's a doctor, and I'm like, yo, and he's actually a head doctor at a major hospital in Texas. So again, reputable, close friend. And I said to him, how bad is this? And he goes, really bad. People are passing away. And I'm like, that's terrifying. I was like, are the amount of people passing away anywhere near what it's reported? And he says to me, look, I'll be honest with you. If somebody has COVID when they pass away, we are obligated to write down they have COVID.
And it's a COVID death.
Doesn't mean it's a COVID death. He goes, we just have to say they have COVID when they pass. That's a fact. We don't lie. What is true is we got paid a bigger insurance payout for anyone that had COVID when they passed away. And again, you hear things like this, and I'm learning this April, May 2020, and you start questioning what is going on, especially at the same time when in the news it's like, it'll only be a week, it'll only be 2 weeks. And I was told prep for 18 months by a friend who's never wrong. At the time, I'm telling everybody it's going to be 18 months, and everyone's like, you're nuts. I sound like a conspiracy theorist. Fast forward to an 18-month lockdown, and suddenly I don't look so crazy. And then everyone's like, well, of course that was going to happen. And it's like, you didn't agree with me at the beginning when I was prepping for it. And living in America at this point, you just start to see so many things. The invasion of Ukraine from Russia, another great example. I was heavily involved at the very beginning of this because I have a friend and he had an orphanage in Ukraine. And my family are Ukrainian, my granddad specifically. And my granddad fought in World War II. I grew up with stories of my granddad. And I felt moved to do something. So I stopped working and I started generating funds for orphans. I was raising charity. I raised over $600,000 for the orphans in Ukraine. And suddenly I got told by I was in the media constantly, on the news everywhere, started selling some new stories, and suddenly like, we won't be covering that story anymore. I'm like, is the war over? And they're like, we won't be covering it anymore. And you hear things like this, because I work closely with the media, and I'm like, what do you mean you won't be covering it? They go, no more stories about that, please. And it's like, where did that come from? Like, this is a really crazy story. There's so many wild things happening. They're like, it's not what we want in the news. Or a PR agency I work with, again, during COVID, who says, this is our Super Bowl. I'm like, what do you mean? They go, we want this in the news constantly because everyone's at home watching TV and the news. That's eyeballs and that's ad revenue. They're like, our ad revenue's through the roof. We want this in the news as often as possible. So I'm like the worst kind of conspiracy theorist because I don't believe there is like a shadow government or lizard people. I don't believe there's a secret agenda. I believe in the way that humans operate. And I think that your average human is self-serving and really cares about themselves. So I think that when that person called me and said they wanted the cold storage facilities, they were worried about how bad they'd look if there were dead bodies and nowhere to put them. When they realized it wouldn't be that bad, They then became worried about their budget, and the whole thing shifted. Were they the one that wanted to push in the media that there were a lot of COVID deaths? No. That would have been a media advertiser that wanted as many eyeballs as possible this week as last week to hit targets. And they're like, well, what was the news last week? Well, last week it was, COVID, so let's make it about that this week. I think that it's literally just a bunch of headless chickens, and everyone is self-serving. And when we talk about, like, in that case, how did I get the heads up? I don't think it was some kind of secret conspiracy where he's like, I'm going to tell my friend. I don't think it was that at all. I think it was some very smart people who have dealt with quarantine preparations in the past. And I'd already been told by my financial guy that the way COVID was acting was very similar to previous pandemics, swine flu, etc. And so my buddy said, hey, just so you know, you probably want to prepare for an 18-month quarantine. And like, that was huge, but that's their forecast. Like, they've done a mathematical calculation. How bad could this pandemic be? And I think my buddy was just giving me a heads up. So it's not as crazy as it sounds. Like I said, but yeah, conspiracies, when you live in America, you realize that that's the problem with capitalism, right? When you've got a media agency that makes money based on how many eyeballs, then your goal is to get as many people to sit at home and watch the news. When you have a big pharma who make their money from selling vaccines, an optional vaccine isn't as profitable as a mandatory one. So you start seeing the world in a different way. So it's not a secret conspiracy, it's just self-serving people.
I remember when COVID was starting to get worse and worse, I was at the right place at the right time. I had my offices in Ukraine, Eastern Europe. They've lived with oppressive governments for decades. So when they were like, oh, you need to wear a mask, everything needs to be closed, Ukrainian was like, yeah, officially, yes. We would go to every restaurant. We would call them in the middle of the height of the pandemic. Okay, my whole family in Austria were sitting at home, 2 masks, full on quarantine, like no music, like whatever crazy, stupid rules. And in Ukraine, you would call a restaurant like, hey, are you guys open? And they're like, yeah, just coming through the back door. We have to keep the windows shut with the curtains in front of it, but just coming through the back door. And I remember we were eating at the restaurants. Life was completely normal. At the mall, there was one guy at the entrance that would tell you to put a mask on, but you would just walk past him and like, yeah. And he's like, whatever. Because even he didn't give a shit, even he didn't believe it. I remember this one time we were sitting in a restaurant, and I'm loud. I love talking. I speak English. I ramble. I'm sitting at the table with like a bunch of my staff telling a story. And as I'm telling the story, I'm facing the entrance. The door opens, and literally, I shit you not, probably 24 what looked like SWAT police officers come in with like, these like terrorist masks on, like not like a COVID mask, but these full on masked faces with the little MP5s. Masks, they're coming in and like, everybody closed. Like this restaurant is now closed, 10 p.m. Everybody get out. And this guy, they're coming from table to table, right? But I'm in the middle of my story. So this guy comes up with his MP5 and is like saying something in Russian. And I'm like, 1 second, let me finish. So I just finished and this guy was like, oh, okay. Yeah. He was so buffed that I'm speaking in English to him with this like this much authority in my voice. I'm like, you're not going to interrupt my fucking story,
It's a story, dude.
Yeah, like, dude. Yeah. I'm getting to the point of this epic story. Let me fucking finish. Anyways, but that was funny. And I think that that restaurant didn't pay the police, and that's why they closed him down. Makes sense. It was all corrupt. Yeah. And we threw parties. I remember I threw my 30th birthday party, June 2020. 60 people in the house. Insane. Pool party, everything. Shisha. Everybody's smoking from one hookah, you guys call it, from one hookah thing. Nobody cared. And then I started traveling. Once because that was this initial lockdown where the airlines did not fly at all. Mm-hmm. And after that, they did.
They needed to make money.
Exactly. They're like, hey, shit. And you just needed like a negative test, or whatever. Or later on, you needed a recovery certificate to travel. And then I realized, like, holy shit, I'm traveling to Iceland. There's nobody there. Like, all the hotels are empty. We got upgraded to presidential suites all the time. Yeah. And I'm like, nobody's there. We got all the sick places by ourselves. Not wanting to come across like an asshole here, but this was legit one of the best times in my entire life was COVID, traveling.
I mean, like, I think the reality is there were two types of people through COVID. There were those that were terrified of it, and there were those that were being, practical about it.
Opportunistic.
Yeah.
They looked for where's the opportunity.
Right. Now, I want to be clear. I know people that passed away due to COVID. But, I also lived through bird flu and swine flu.
Yeah.
And I also know people that passed away to those. So when I looked at my personal rate, and you can't look at statistics based on your personal data, I'm aware, but I do have a large network, and I do look at my network to see, and I'm like, oh, the numbers are about the same. And then every time somebody passed away that I knew, I was obviously very concerned, but I followed up with, did they have any pre-existing conditions? And every single time it was like, well, they had a lung issue, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. I understand. Flu is dangerous no matter what. COVID is a very virulent type of flu, so it makes sense. Did it make sense to quarantine? Probably. I think, my dad, I made sure he stayed quarantined. Made sure he stayed safe. Having said that, there was an amount of control and loss of quality of life and an amount of financial gain by a lot of large corporations. And what was funny is the vocal minority that normally are against these corporations were pro.
Yeah.
So you got the people that normally say we don't like capitalism, we don't like big pharma, saying make sure you get your vaccine, make sure you go and buy a mask, right? So they'd shifted, and to me that's always the case. When your core programming alters, that's normally when I say there's some kind of propaganda going on here, because I expected my very liberal friends to say this is a money grab by a big pharma.
Exactly.
You can make a mushroom mask. I don't know. I felt like they would have some kind of non-commercial solution.
Yeah.
You don't need a vaccine.
From hemp.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a
Like
hemp
rub
mask.
3 diamonds on your head and breathe in through quartz and you'll be safe. That's what I presumed was going to happen.
Yeah.
But these people were screaming at me. You got to have every vaccine. You got to have every update. You got to have every booster.
That was the crazy thing. It was somehow the liberal left completely adopted it, exactly like you said.
Yeah, and that's propaganda. And you can see this anytime. You just have to look at when somebody's core dialogue is changing. And this goes like even to friends. If you've got a friend group, you should have this one friend that starts acting different. And you're like, bro, that is not you.
Yeah.
Like for example, let's say you got a friend who's really not religious at all. Doesn't believe in God. No, not religious at all. Gets a new girlfriend. New girlfriend's Christian. And the next thing you know, he's going to church. Didn't want to do it, but he does it anyway, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, okay. And then he's like, I think there might be something to this God thing. And you're not going to be like, this guy's finally found God. You're going to be like, she got to him, right? That's what you're going to say, because it's propaganda.
Yeah.
And what happens often in America in the media is massive propaganda and media control. And if you are in America, and it's probably the same in other countries. I'm not going to judge other countries, but if you're in a country, you do have to go and look at media in other countries and see different stories from other perspectives.
Yeah.
And I think that changes things. I'm blessed. I've traveled all over the world. I've spent 3 years of my life living in Africa. I've spent a large amount of my life living in England. I've spent time living in the Philippines. And I've traveled to over 40 countries that speak all wide ranges of languages. And when you look at media in each of these places, you realize they've all got a propaganda machine because that's part of what they do.
Yeah.
And you have to learn to see it and be like, okay, what is real and what is propaganda? And most of the time, I just phone people that I know that work in the media or work, as doctors. And I'm like, tell me what's actually going on. Like, how bad is this? And then and that's kind of how I operate. So yeah, it's only a conspiracy until someone proves it to be real. The problem is, it is in the propaganda machine's interest to make sure that you are not vocal against the propaganda machine, because the propaganda machine is trying to achieve something.
Yeah.
And it could be a capitalist machine trying to make money. It could be a government machine trying to get you to be more loyal to the government or being anti, enemies, mobilizing America to war. And that's going to be the propaganda machine. It's real. It exists. You can study it. And you can't deny it. It does exist.
Yeah.
The question is, what controversial conspiracy theory is propaganda machine, and what controversial conspiracy theory is, the lizard people ate my homework.
Now, you with COVID specifically, you mentioned that the person who informed you earlier, this is going to be a 16 or 18-month quarantine. And you specifically compared it to swine flu. I remember the one with the beef.
They were mad cow disease
mad cow
in the UK,
disease.
but bird flu is the other one.
Bird flu and all that stuff. I remember all of those, and none of them were even remotely as hardcore in terms of any. There was no quarantine, no nothing. Now, I remember watching it in the news as far back as the mad cow disease. I must have been 10 years old when I was that. And it was always like, yeah, it's kind of concerned, yada, yada. But you compare COVID to that. My question is, how did COVID turn into such a huge thing compared to the other ones? And how did your buddy specifically say 18 months quarantine? Because you mentioned, and I love your view on that because I share that. I asked a lot of other people on the podcast the exact same question. I'm like, how much of that do you think is a shadow government or a group of elite trying to deliberately control us versus just a bunch of opportunistic media outlets and companies, which seems to be your standpoint here, where you say
100%.
It's just chickens without a hat. They're like, oh, let's capitalize on that. But now you saying also that this guy knew 18 months ahead of time, that sounds strangely like not like chickens without a hat.
No, it's chickens without heads. I'll explain.
Okay.
I'm a strategist. I love strategy. I like strategy in business. I like strategy in board games. If anyone knows me, really knows me, they know that I play Dungeons and Dragons, I play Warhammer, I play Magic the Gathering. And anyone who really knows me knows it's really hard to beat me at these things. I had a YouTube channel about Warhammer 40,000, and I started posting videos on how to win at Warhammer. And I got all these comments being like, what does this guy know? Who the hell is this guy, right? Well, I used to work for the company that made Warhammer when I was a teenager. I've won countless tournaments as a kid, but they're right. In the last 20 years, I haven't won a tournament. So I phoned the #1 player in the world. I invited him to my house. I filmed it, and I beat him.
No shit.
Yeah. So when I say I'm good at something, I'm really good at strategy. I just don't like doing tournaments. I'm not into that. But I used to be a professional fencer. I've competed around the world. When it comes to strategy, I love it. The clients that work with me like that about me. You hire me because you want a strategist that will outthink people. It's my favorite thing to do. I do it as a hobby. It's all I do. So Occupy Wall Street was a problem. A big problem.
When was that? 2013?
I don't remember exactly. I'm just going to be real. And also, I only like saying things I know for a fact. I don't remember exactly, but you'll all remember the movement. And it was a problem because a whole bunch of people decided to just occupy Wall Street. And there was no way to move them. They tried to change laws. They tried to get them for they tried everything. But there was no real way to do it. And I don't know this for a fact, but I'm going to presume that some smart strategist like me was pulled into a room and said, what would you do?
Shit.
And they said, I would say that many people living together in unhygienic situation can create some kind of a sickness, and I would quarantine them. And I'm guessing that somebody said that. I don't have that as a fact. What I do have as a fact is my buddy, who I know works in certain departments, said to me, we've been looking for an excuse to test a quarantine.
Oh.
As a solution to getting people to disperse, because it's their choice to disperse for their own safety. It's not, we're moving you. And that psychologically is a big difference. If you can have a group of people come together and they're occupying something and they're refusing to move, and then you can find a localized sickness that they're all spreading, like when you go on a cruise ship, someone gets a stomach bug, and suddenly they all have problems, and it's like, okay, for your own good, you guys are getting quarantined from each other. I'm sorry, we understand that you really need to, occupy this particular area. However, this is now an issue. And the question was, they needed the right thing that they could test it on, see how people would react. And my buddy said, I'm hearing it being tossed around that this is one of the solutions.
That was the buddy who told you 18 months.
That was the buddy that said 18 months. Because he didn't say it's going to happen. He said, I've heard that they're testing this solution, and I've heard that they'd like to test it for 18 months. And again, was it high up? No. This is someone in a room, someone like me, a strategist, who is pulled into a room and they say, how are we going to handle this? What are we going to do? They go, well, we've always wanted to test that quarantine thing.
And then how did they go from there to the pandemic? They then went to the Wuhan lab and said, hey, we got this test thingy. Which one could work?
Don't think of it like that. Think chickens. Think some random person in Wuhan was an idiot that took a bat, sold it at the market to make some cash, and it didn't realize that they'd got an infected one, and then you've got this thing spreading around Asia. That's my financial buddy gave me the heads up first. He said, this is looking like a pandemic. So I already knew that. Then my other buddy came. So at that point, if my financial buddy knows about it, obviously departments in America are going to know about it, and that's when my buddy contacted me.
And then they were like, oh, this thing in China sounds great. Let's put one and one together. Let's make
They didn't
come
bring it over
to the US.
No, they didn't bring it. I promise you they didn't bring it. They just...
I mean, they're like, let's just wait till one motherfucker comes.
And they preempt solutions. Like, I'll give you an example, and you can find this online. There's I forget the name of the woman that did it, but after the Twin Towers came down, there was a security person that had been saying for ages. I don't know if they were in the police but you can find it online. There's a woman that talks about this, and she said there is a legitimate concern of somebody causing a terrorist act in the Twin Towers, and we should have an evacuation plan. And no one listened to them. Said, you're crazy. This is never going to happen. The minute it happened, they called him. Hey, what's your evacuation plan?
Wow.
There are always people in departments. I know this. Like, there's a company I worked in, and we had a guy walk out of the office one day. And as he walked out the office, not my company, I was a consultant. And he said, he just looked at everyone and went, sometimes I'm sick of you guys. And everyone in the office laughed. And I was like, call the police. And everyone in the office like, don't be silly. I'm like, you've hired me as a consultant, call the police.
Wow.
And they're like, why? He's joking. I'm like, that's a death threat. Call the police. I was like, I'm not joking. You've called me here. Call the police. So it took me an hour to convince my client to call the police. They call the police. The police come in. They go, thank you so much for calling us. And they're like, we don't want to press charges. They go, that's not what we're going to do. We'd like blueprints to the building, and we'd like to walk around. You see, because hopefully that was a joke. We're not going to action on a joke. But if it isn't, and if he comes back and he does something, the difference between us having a blueprint on file and having walked through it and know the names of the rooms can be 5 or 7 minutes difference during an active shooting scenario. Because if you say to us, the break room on the east wing, we know how to get in, where it is, and the fastest route, and the information tower can pull up the blueprint and guide everyone through it. So we spent an hour with the police through a mock scenario. That's a really good example of like conspiracy theory. But us doing that doesn't create an active shooter.
Yeah.
Right? But what I'm saying is there are various departments, they preempt these scenarios. And then you've got the individual that is like, let's use that protocol, right? Like, so for example, if you put security systems that lock down all the doors and everyone's trapped inside, and you outline it and you pay to get it done, and then there's an active shooter scenario, someone's going to be like, let's do that protocol, right? And then you're like, okay, hit the button, right?
Boom, yeah.
So if they've got and there are many protocols. I'm only sharing things that I know. I'm sure because I've seen it in companies. You create countless protocols for hypothetical scenarios. I used to be a consultant and work with Yum Corporation, KFC, not KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, that company. And I worked with a number of other companies as well. But at KFC, my job was to predict problems before they happened and write protocols for what to do if they do. So I had a folder of like 50, 60 crisis scenarios, our official public statement, and what to do on things that never happened.
Like what, for example?
Okay, so for example, what do you do if Peter decides to go into KFC and throw in a bunch of live chickens and cut their heads off? What would we do in that scenario? And then lock the door. So you've got patrons inside eating food, and the headless chickens are running around, blood going everywhere because chickens keep moving without a head.
Yeah.
So I had to write out the whole scenario of what we would say, how we would handle it, who do we contact, who do you phone, right? And that was my job. My job was, and I got paid a good salary to think of these scenarios and have a solution.
This is really, really interesting stuff. I have multiple other questions. Just to get back to that COVID example.
Yeah.
I understand everything now except for how did they make it so that the left, who's naturally against big corporate, against big media, big pharma, fully ate that up and completely changed. Was that targeted? Were they specifically saying, oh, let's get the lefties on? So, and how did they do it with the lefties as opposed to, for example, the right people?
So again, I don't know. Because to me, I don't think there is this big conspiracy of somebody controlling. It's just individual people reacting in this headless chicken scenario, right? But I mean, the reality is, if you think it through, I think it was more likely that Republicans are going to go against control because they value freedom.
Yeah.
They value making their own choices. Whereas the left are less likely to have that scenario. But there is also a more practical scenario. I can't tell you how many people phoned me during COVID to tell me off because I was making videos where I wasn't wearing a mask. But I was on my land. And my land is 43 acres. And I remember my dad phoning me after I made a video sharing some content online. And my dad said, how dare you be in public without a mask? And I was like, I'm not in public, I'm in private. I was like, this is my land. And my dad's like, yeah, but you should still have a mask. I was like, if you're within 6 feet of another human. And he goes, well, it could be more dangerous than that. I was like, Dad, the closest thing to me is 40 foot away and it's a cow. I was like, there's no human. I'm in the field in the middle of nowhere. I'm holding the camera in my own hand. Like there is no other human being. Like, and I was like, and if I have COVID, everyone in my house has COVID. We all live in the same house.
Yeah,
I was like, you're being ridiculous. But my dad was phoning me up to try and enforce it because the reality is, it is far more likely that a Republican owns farmland. Because if you own farmland, you're more likely to want to be free and have your own rules. Whereas if you are a Democrat, if you're more liberal, you probably live in a city. Well, if I lived in a city during COVID, I'd have worn a bloody mask every day.
Yeah.
Because there's all these people, I mean, on planes, coughing. I mean, I don't wear a mask on a plane, but I understand why some people would, right? You know, if I see somebody coughing next to me on a plane, they don't have to have COVID. I'm just like, just wear a mask, bro. Like, you're sneezing all over me, right? Like, it's just common courtesy. Cover your hand, right? You know, like, do something. So again, if you just apply logic, and I think most people just don't do that, it's not a conspiracy. It's just logical, right? If I live in a city, I'm more likely to be a Democrat because I'm unlikely to have land. I'm more likely to want that kind of control. Like, you want to hear my gun debate? This is one of my favorites.
Yeah, let's go.
So I grew up in England, no guns, right? I come to America, and I'm like, I'm not going to buy a gun. But I don't need a gun. I'm from England. It's not that I'm anti-guns. I just don't need one. And that's what you think until you live on a ranch, an hour away from everywhere. And then one day, you see a copperhead in your garden.
A what? What's
Copperhead.
that? A snake?
It's a really, really venomous snake.
Oh, I think you told me about this. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and so you call the cops. There's a copperhead in my garden. In England, that's what you do, right? So I'm in America, and I've got a copperhead in my garden, and the cop's like, kill it. How? Shoot it. I don't have a gun. Don't go near it. Is there anything else I can do? You can call the reptile place. There's like a reptile zoo. Yeah. There's actual reptile zoo like down the road. And I was like, well, they're closed. Call them on Monday. How do I know the copperhead's going to be there? He's like, are you sure you should be living out here? You know, like,
That's what he said.
yeah, it's like a thing, right? And so then you get to a situation where as time goes on and years go by, which is where I am now, you know, I've got a chicken coop. And one day there's a venomous snake in the chicken coop.
Yeah.
And actually the person that found it was my girlfriend. She screams, ah! Looks around, ah! Oh yeah, no one can hear you because the chicken coop's too far from the house. So she walks into the house, opens the door, goes, I said, ah! Like, so what's up? And she goes, there's a snake in the chicken coop. It's venomous, right? And so we go out there, and sure enough, it's another copperhead. And these things are dangerous. And it's not actually killing the chickens, it's after the eggs. And you realize you got to kill it or remove it. And remove it means tackling a venomous snake and removing it. Killing it is a safer option. And after you've dealt with 3 or 4 of these things, as a man with no ability to call anyone else to come in and get it, you start realizing that you probably want some kind of a weapon.
Yeah.
And the other one is injuries. We had a deer get trapped in a fence. And it slit its throat open. Blood everywhere. It's in pain. It's in agony. It's dying. Again, you call the police. You know, see if you can dress it up. Maybe you can eat it, right? And it's like not the answer I wanted, right? And you're like, what do? You call a vet. The vet's like, that's not an exotic animal you own. You know, we can do it. It's going to cost you thousands of dollars. And you're like, well, that doesn't work either. And I remember I phoned a very good friend of mine who's anti-gun Democrat after the scenario. And he said, what did you do? And I said, I put it out of its misery. And he goes, in that scenario, I understand why you'd want a gun. And I was like, yeah, I'm not suggesting that every teenager should live in a city and have a gun. That's not what I'm after. But I do believe that there are some scenarios that it's practical to have a weapon.
Yeah.
And again, if you're a Republican and you own a farm, to you that's obvious. And someone trying to take away your gun is taking away your ability to defend your family from real threats. Yeah. Do you know how dangerous hogs are?
Oh, yeah, they're massive danger. Also because their skin is so damn thick.
All right, so one day, I open the front door to my house, and I've got a parking lot outside my house. I want you to guess how many hogs were in my parking lot.
I don't know, 6?
There were 30.
Oh,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
30 hogs. I didn't get to leave my house that day. I had to phone people with guns to come and remove the hogs. This is before I had a gun. Yeah, like, you're not going anywhere. You now live indoors with a shut door, and they're like dumping into your car. Like, there's no option, you know. And you start thinking, how am I going to get rid of hogs? Like, and make sure there's no hogs.
Call a
around.
bunch of people, ask them if they want barbecue. Hey, you guys want a barbecue?
Supposedly it doesn't taste good. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, apparently hogs don't taste good.
No, I thought it was really good.
No, I don't know. I don't know. I've not tried it. I've just heard. Yeah. Every time I tell everyone, do you want it? They're like, no, it doesn't taste good. But the point is, you know, it's only when you live in America that you really realize there is a massive difference between living on farmland an hour away from anything, where they're like, our nearest hospital is an hour away. If you get bitten by a rattlesnake, you got 45 minutes. what are you gonna do? Like you're gonna speed down the road, you know?
Do you have anti-venom at home or something like that?
No.
Is that not a normal thing to have? Like the most common snakes around.
You have a gun
and
you
but in
shoot
case
them.
you do get bit, you know,
You shoot them and don't do it. Like you learn to live with the land, and that's the difference. When you live on a farm, you're not or on a ranch. You're not trying to protect against every single scenario. You're just living on the land, and you deal with it. You know, like I remember during COVID when everyone else was stressing about not being able to get eggs, we were giving families groceries.
Beautiful, yeah.
We fed 4 families during COVID.
Love it.
By giving them groceries, giving them eggs, giving them food. We had a deal with a local butcher. We were still buying meat direct from a butcher that we normally buy meat from.
Love
you know, it was completely self-sustainable, with the exception of buying sauces. Like I'd go to the market and buy like, you know, a bunch of flavors and stuff like that, and spices and stuff, right? But yeah, it was a very unique time. But that's the difference. And when you live in that world, you just recognize that, you know, conspiracies. There is an element of truth in some. I'm not all of them. Some people are crazy.
Yeah, and I love the fact that almost everyone I talk to, they either already own a ranch or a farm, or they're planning to get one. It's such a thing for like our generation, like the men in our generation, of like make a ton of money, travel around, live in a lot of cities, date a lot of pretty women, and then at some point settle down on a fucking farm. Everybody has that.
It's a reaction to COVID. So I remember
that could be. That's
it's 100%.
Yeah.
So Ryan Holiday lives down the road from here. Tucker Max lives down the road from here. 2 friends of mine. Neither of them had a ranch when we met, and I told both of them, "I'm getting a ranch, and here's why." And they used to, like Tucker Max is a close friend of mine. Tucker used to call me a crazy survivalist. If you look at Tucker's feed right now, Tucker is much more of a crazy survivalist than I am. Much more. But like the first time Tucker came over to my house, like I was showing him my knife collection, and I was talking about like the best way that I handle snakes. Like I've got a whole method for it that is, you know, safe. And like that's how we bonded. And Tucker's like, dude, you're crazy. But now we're really good buddies. He phoned me and goes, dude, you were onto something before the rest of us. Like you knew.
Love it.
And I was like, yeah, because my clients give me a heads up. They say to me stuff like this. But this is a reaction to COVID. When you take away a group's freedom, the next thing they're going to crave is freedom. You know, so if you're like, you know, we're going to control you because you live in a city, they're going to like, well, I'm not going to live in a city then.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah.
You mentioned earlier, strategy is all you think about, it's all you do. If you were to do, you probably have it, but if you were to create a blueprint for like any strategy, you come in, whether it's a business strategy you have to develop, or a survival strategy, or political strategy, or media strategy, what are kind of like the boxes you need to tick off?
Oh, dude, I love this. That's the best question I've ever been asked in an interview.
Perfect.
Ever. So you start with the weakest link in the chains. You don't start at the top. Everyone gets this wrong. You start at the bottom. So actually this just happened. I just got hired to be a consultant for a multi-billion-dollar construction firm in Saudi Arabia. And the very first thing I did is went into the company and I did one-on-ones with all the lowest people in the company. The people that are the weakest links in the chain.
I mean, that must have been hundreds.
It's actually fascinating. It wasn't. We could distill the biggest problems to 6 people. Remember, this isn't the person that gets paid the least. It's the weakest link. It's where are all the problems coming from?
Okay.
And so you can just pinpoint, okay, these 6 people are named constantly in problems. So we want to sit and talk to them. And when you talk to them, you're really just trying to find what their motivation is. Like, what are they trying to do? And once we can identify the motivation of the weakest link, we can start figuring out what the strategy is going to be. Maybe that strategy is going to be to exploit that weak link. Maybe the strategy is to cut off that weak link. Maybe the strategy is to level up that weak link. So I'll give you an example. So I love sword fighting, like so much, Max. Every year I go to an event in Montreal where I fight with 5,000 people in full armor on a battlefield.
Sick, man.
And the most amount of people that I can beat in a fight, I can beat 11 people.
Damn, all at once?
All at once.
No shit.
Now, I do want to be clear. Somebody's going to see this, and I'm going to say, I can't beat 11 people who are as good as me.
Okay.
I can't beat 11 people who are professionally trained fighters. But at this event, I'm in the top 1%. There is a bottom 50%. And when I talk about beating 11 people, I mean the people in the bottom 50%.
Got it.
But on a battlefield scenario, taking out 11 people alone is huge. But when you fight 11 people, you don't think, like, it's not like that, right? What you do is you go, who's the weakest link? It's the same thing. And in a fight, you're going to take those people out first to reduce the numbers of opponents down. I'm looking for people that I can defeat very quickly, that I know are not going to want another piece of me. But the problem is the best fighters are going to try and hit you when your back's turned. So the strategy is threaten the strongest, take out the weakest. threaten the strongest, take out the weakest, until you reduce the number down. After you've defeated 4 or 5 people like this, the better guys start questioning if they can even beat you. And then at this point, one of them might get brave and go for it, and then you ignore everyone and beat them real bad. Real bad. Everyone needs to see how bad. Make them fall over, like scream in their face when they're down. I mean, like there's now psychological warfare going on. Now the weaker people don't even want to get involved anymore, right? And then you can start screaming things like, who's next? And now you're hunting. You're still outnumbered 4 or 5 to 1, but now there is this whole psychological warfare going on.
Shit.
Right? So now let's imagine that we're playing, we're playing Warhammer. And in Warhammer, you've got your army, I've got my army, and I'm going to look and think, what of your units can I wipe out guaranteed at the beginning of the game? If I can take out a third of your army before we start, Warhammer's a turn-based game.
Yeah.
If I get the first turn and a third of your army's gone, you look and go, well, I was going to do this, I was going to do that. It's like you're going to do lots of things. Now you can't. Now what are you going to do? Because you really want to upset people and have them start thinking, right?
Yeah.
So this strategy can be applied to everything. So when I go into a business, I'm looking for the weakest links, figuring out what I'm going to do with them, and then you sort of like start raising awareness to the strongest links. How do you feel about these people being with you? How do you, what do you want to happen here? And you build through it. If we take that same application and we do Occupy Wall Street, the strongest links are going to be the people in Wall Street with money, and the weakest links are going to be those that don't have money but that are causing the biggest disruption. So obviously we're going to talk to both. We want this scenario to go away. So when we go into the people that are occupying, we're then going to find the weakest links who don't want to be here. Let's talk to them. Or who are causing the most trouble. We want to talk to them. And we just start piecing together the picture in the weakest links, the areas where we can start chipping away and making something fall apart. I mean, think about the movie 300. Do you ever see it?
Yeah, love that movie.
You know, it's based on a real story, right? The Battle of Thermopylae. So, one person, the weakest link, is the one person they refuse to let join the army. That whole thing.
Ephialtes, or what
Yeah,
is it?
yeah, exactly. Ephialtes. If that guy was allowed to be a Spartan, if he was allowed to join, they would have won. Now, here's the crazy thing. They explained, or Leonidas explains to him, that the reason he can't join is he can't raise his shield high enough to protect his buddy. But they had allies that were Athenians that had their back, that did not fight the same way. It would have been the easiest thing for Leonidas to say to the weakest link, listen, we need to raise our shield to defend our partner's back. But there is one role more important than anyone. One role where you could be a Spartan hero. We need you to watch our backs from the stinking Athenians. Just in case they turncoat. Because the thing us Spartans hate more than anything is a turncoat. And instead of completely destroying this guy's ego, which is what happened and made him go to the enemy so that he could win, he would have turned that weakness into a strength. That's strategy. Strategy is understanding the weakness on the battlefield and working out whether you're going to destroy it or work with it.
Damn. Damn. And you've done this in so many different scenarios as a consultant in so many different fucking companies.
To me, it's just that is the approach to absolutely like everything in life. Like I'm going to do the same thing. Someone gives me a scenario, I need an outside of the box solution. I'm going to start looking at the weakest link. I'm going to look at the strongest links, and I'm going to see what's there. Like where can I cause damage, or where can I repair? Where can I strengthen? Because strategy isn't always about attack. Sometimes it is defense. So I want to look at who are our weakest links, who are potentially going to damage this company or our battlefield or whatever it is that we're doing, and then build around that.
That is so crazy, because as an entrepreneur, I can resonate with that in terms of you're trying to get as many A players in your company as possible. You're trying to cover most of the needle-moving positions with as many A players as possible. But then you also have less, quote-unquote, less important positions where you're just like, look, this can be done by anyone. Don't need to be an A player. So I don't want to waste, quote-unquote, waste my time trying to cover this by an A player. I just find someone who does a good enough job.
Let me give you a great example. We're both in the hustle culture, right?
Yeah.
You got these entrepreneurs, information products, social media. Get a team of A players and you can't go wrong. You know what's funny? McDonald's is one of the largest companies in the world. I've never walked into a McDonald's and seen a team of A players, because the reality is the most powerful companies in the world are not built on the backs of A players.
They're built on the back of strategy and positions and procedures.
And low-level players that cannot fail because of a system
Yeah.
created by A players.
Exactly.
And so again, we're not being told the whole picture. When it's very easy to say that quick phrase like, "Oh, if you get A players, you can't fail. Buy my book, A players win." Right? Like, cool. But it's always more complicated than that. No one wants to imagine it's that complicated, but it is. You have to have A players. You also have to be able to work with not A players.
Yeah.
You know, I realized a role in my company recently that was missing. I actually just hired them. Today's Monday. I hired them today,
Nice.
but I interviewed them last week. I realized I had no middle managers. And I hate middle management. I hate it so much. But I realized that with no middle management in my company, I had nobody that was walking around behind people's back being like, "Did you do that?" You know? And I realized there's an actual need for it. When your company gets to a certain size, you kind of need someone to be like, you know, "John, did you do that thing you said you do today? It's okay, do it tomorrow." Right? That role's really important. And it blew me away when I was like, oh, of course, for hundreds of years, that role has existed. It's not existed because everyone's dumb and I'm smart, right? It's existed because I didn't recognize how important it was.
That's the key. We always compare it with. Do you remember the Matrix Reloaded? You seen it? Where they're defending Zion from the machines. And the machines, they have these the Sentinels, you know, they look like little squids. And they're coming through a ceiling and through a hole in the ceiling. And they're swarming out. And the humans have these machine mechs, these like robots, remember these? And they have like machine guns on both hands, and they have to point the machine guns at that hole and just start shooting.
Right. And
then at some point, the Sentinels, because this is such a stupid metaphor, but it's such a long-winded metaphor. At some point, the Sentinels come through, and they're swirling around, and all these robots are trying to fight, and then some of the Sentinels then attack the human that is operating that mech. And then that human is just this like lifeless body, and they're pulling the lifeless body out, and then the next guy gets in and just keeps shooting. And that's kind of like a metaphor for how your business should be running. It's like the mech does the work. The mech in this metaphor is your systems, your structure. And the human that operates that can come in, can come out, could be a different person, can get sick, can get fired, can leave. The next person comes in, instantly knows, this is where my feet go, this is where the trigger is, this is where I need to shoot.
I don't think anyone on the internet could have predicted where that was going to go. I definitely had no idea. That was the best. That was like the best analogy ever. It's like no way. Anyone who's watching this, like, leave a comment if you guess. There's no way. But it's good. It's a good analogy.
But that's how it is, and it's like the more you can set your company up in a way that person comes in, goes through an internal training. For example, all our internal training is fully automated to a degree. If you're a sales rep, you're still going to have to ramp up and actually get real life experience in. But 80% on average, I would say, is completely automated. So someone comes in, welcome to the company, here's your internal training, see you in 2 weeks.
Love it.
And they go through it. That's kind of like the mech part. And then they're ready. And there's just this like complete beautiful structure. And I have to give props to the way this worked is because of my old German partners. They're typical Germans. They're like, everything is the procedure. Yes. Everything needs to be there. Because when you're just starting out, you know, you're making your first 100K, your first 200K. It all works, and you're happy. And you're like, when you're making 100,000 profit as like a young 20-year-old, like I first time did, I'm like, I'm making 100K profit. This is unreal numbers. I cannot fathom anything larger than that. It was funny because we talked about Saudi Arabia earlier, right? This is nothing, right?
It's as you're saying it, I'm like remembering last week.
Exactly. You're like, whatever, right? But as a young, you're like, this is unreal. I'm making $100,000 in profit. That's more than my dad made in 2 years. You know what I mean? So you're like, everything works great. But the problem is, just because it's working great right now doesn't mean it will work great at 500K profit. So all you're doing is you're building systems that are almost like the foundation of a building, like a scaffolding.
Yep.
And as you're scaling, you put on more clients, more money, more staff. You're putting stress onto that structure. And if, like you said, if there's a weakest part, that structure will all of a sudden break. But we always say like this, when you're scaling a company, scale it, like run it as if it's 5 times the size already. Yep. So meaning maybe right now what works because it's a fucking house of cards, and as you happen, everybody kind of knows what to do. But if you have 5 of each and every staff member that you currently have, will they still know? Will there still be an overview? Will you still have the numbers? Will there still be a controlling mechanism to check the numbers, the KPIs, and so on and so forth? If the answer is no, well then better fucking build the systems now before shit's floating around and the fucking hitting the fan and you have no control. Because right now it's fucking easy, so better build the structure now to weather the storm, to make sure your scaffolding is strong enough to hold the weight. And then conversely, though, when you're too extreme about that, what you're creating is you're creating a fear of growing. You're like, oh, I can't scale yet because things are not perfect yet. So there's a certain mindset that you need to have. On one hand, you want to be aware that there's a structure, and that structure needs to be strong. The foundation needs to be strong. But on the other hand, you also want to make sure that you're specifically scaling with the goal of breaking things. Yep. You're not necessarily scaling with the goal of making more money, although of course, but that's more like an end result of you trying to deliberately break things so you can see where the weakness is. Another funny metaphor that probably nobody can see. So you remember in Jurassic Park, the first one, when they're seeing the raptor cage for the first time, and that crazy, I think he's Australian, that Australian hunter dude is like, they never attack the same point in the fence twice. They're great, smart, clever girls, you know, shit like that. That's kind of what you want to do. It's like you don't never want to attack the same point of the electrical fence twice. You figure out where is the weakness right now, where is the weakest chain in my link, the weakest link in my chain right now. And the way you figure that out is by fucking scaling and making more money. And all of a sudden, you're making great money. You guys are closing well. The show rate is great. Everything converts. But your coaches can't deliver, right? Maybe clients become grumpy. You're not having enough calls, whatsoever. And now you're like, oh, I found the weakest link. It's the delivery. Yep. Okay, now let's make sure that we're doing as good of a job as possible. So you got to kind of find a balance between making sure your structure is, the foundation is strong, but also that you keep scaling, that you know that you charge ahead with confidence until you find that weakness.
Dude, I love this. And actually, it's funny, as you're sitting there, we were talking about Saudi Arabia, you reminded me.
Yeah.
In all the major corporations I work with, like big companies, none of the salespeople are on commission. None of them.
Wow.
I knew this would get you.
What?
In small companies, they're all on commission.
Yeah.
So in my company, they're not on commission. And my company is not a massive company, right? We're a consulting company. But in the big companies, and here's why. You don't want a star player when you're doing, like the sale that we made last week. As a consultant, I didn't make this sale myself, but as a consultant part of a team, we made a $214 million sale, a single sale, right?
Baller.
Right. If you pay somebody $2.4 million off of that, well, that's it. They quit, right? Thank you very much, sir. You know, I did a good job. You can't have an A player at that level. You can't.
I mean, you just give them lower commission, not 10%, but 1%.
You could, or you could just pay them a good salary. And to make a $214 million sale, it took a team of 6 of us. It wasn't just one person. We had one person building the PowerPoint. We had somebody else calculating the math of the proposal. We had, right? So it was a whole team effort.
Yeah.
There was not a salesperson. And all the people were just paid hourly, you know, with the exception of me, who was paid my consultancy fee to just get the job done. And you don't think of it as let's make a sale, let's go. You think of it as we need to make one new sale a month. And so these are the 6 projects we're working on right now. And you have this team of 6 people that are constantly just creating a single sales pitch to make a single sale. And it's just math. And it's not a question of will we or won't we get the sale. They kind of know. They're like, yeah, you know, 1 in 10 pitches, we get a sale. So we have to do 10 pitches a month, and that's 1 sale a month.
Yeah. It's still different, though. It's a different dynamic. In a classic structure, you have one person who makes the sale, and of course you want that guy or girl to be incentivized to fucking make the sale.
But check this. Let's go at a smaller level. At McDonald's, any, you know, at the Apple store, they don't get commission.
Because they don't sell. They take orders.
So, but check this. So when we think about a company, and I'm doing this with love, but I'm challenging you, right?
Same. I'm going to
challenge
you
through
back.
the same thing. If at the highest level, we don't pay commission, and at the lowest level, we don't pay commission, what the hell are we doing in the mid-range? Because if our processes for sales were that good, we wouldn't need to give commission because it's just do your job.
Yeah.
We would be so secure that our product is good. We would be so confident that it does a good job. The selling has already happened in the marketing department. Our salespeople should just be order takers or objection handlers. You know, I've never bought a laptop without having a few questions about, you know, which of these, you know, do I want the MacBook or the MacBook Air or the Pro, right? So the person is kind of selling it to me.
Yeah.
But they're not pushy salespeople. And it's really only in our small business between, you know, 8 million and 20 million that you get those pushy salespeople on commission. And, you know, and I question, are we creating that? Because part of it is scarcity. We don't want to guarantee them a good wage because we don't know they're going to perform. On the other hand, we want to make sure they're rewarded if they do perform. But then many of our companies at this level cycle through salespeople because those people get their fat commissions and then they move on. If our sales were that good, really good, we should be able to systemize it, automate it, and just check the numbers and be like, okay, for every 12 people that come through matching our criteria, 2 of them are gonna, buy, and it's a unique thing. You never see it at the high level or the low level, only in our range.
I agree, and I disagree with certain aspects. And we're not above 20 million, so that's probably also a reason why. I've been on both ends. I've been on the marketing does all the heavy lifting, and literally people come to us booking a call saying, I want to buy, I've seen the price, I'm basically ready. And all my sales staff was basically just glorified order takers. I was there. That was around 2018 to 20, 21. It's just, early 2020. That was where the brand did all the heavy lifting. Now, after that, we were forced to figure out cold traffic. I could have retired and been like, I'm good to go, fuck this, but I'd wanted more. And I stood in front of this metaphorical fork in the road where I'm saying, okay, should I just retire and let it be and, whatever, put some of my money into fonts, build a house, and that's it? Or do I want to commit to this stupid thing now, figure out fucking cold traffic and eat shit? Now, granted, I thought I'm going to figure it out in 2 months. It took me 2 years, but I fucking did it. I'm like, okay, I'm in it now. I'm not going to quit until I win, right? At this point where I'm at now, I would, and that was kind of like a funny mindset side note, I did not give myself permission to quit while I'm not ahead. I'm like, you can quit at any time the moment you're ahead. Because then you can make sure, like, at least then you really wanted to quit in the first place, and not just because it sucks.
Fail.
Exactly.
Big difference. I resonate a lot with that.
So now I'm like, shit, I don't want to quit. It's really awesome right now, So yeah. I figured then cold traffic out, and that's where we then had to actually do sales. Because then people came in, they're like, I saw an ad from you yesterday. I have no clue who the fuck Max Tornow is. I barely watched the video at all that the ad sent me to. I just dropped my fucking phone number. What do you guys have to offer? And very arrogant. We had all of these arrogant people, right? So if we had been glorified order takers, we wouldn't have actually been able to make the sale. Now, there's the argument of like, pushing people, la-di-da. But at the same time, I'm like, if we didn't push certain people, they would have bought from a fucking inferior product. They would have gotten 0 results. They've wasted their money. So it's in our responsibility to push people that are not 100% sure if they want to buy yet, because we actually know that our delivery is the best in the world. I keep saying this to my entire staff, whether they're coach or sales. We're like, we sell hard, but we deliver even fucking harder. Kind of the same with my girlfriend. My girlfriend didn't want to go on a date. I asked her 6 or 7 fucking times until she finally said yes. Why did I do that? Because I knew I'm going to be the best motherfucker this girl ever is going to meet. And now we're 8 years in. So I'm like, the dynamic is always the same. If you're scared or you don't want to push, it's like, get really good at the delivery part. Become really good as a person, as a human, as a potential boyfriend, as a company. And then you can also push harder because you're pushing people into something really great. Just like you pushed Ryan Holiday to get a fucking farm or a ranch. It's the same thing. It's the same metaphor. And now the great thing is, I've pushed my sales staff. A lot of them left. A lot of them could make it. We had to fire them. But the core sales staff that is with us now, those are guys and gals that can close someone completely cold for $4,000, for $25,000. It doesn't matter. They can close someone because they know sales. Yeah. But also now at the same time, the brand has been picking up again since last year due to this podcast. We get so many people paying us thousands of dollars just because they saw the podcast, which is fantastic. And I get to speak to cool people like you. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, that's not even the goal of the podcast. The goal of the podcast was just me to talk to cool people. But now my sales staff is used to hard selling. But now they're getting people in that are like, oh, I'm ready to buy. And the sales staff is like, oh, shit. Well, let's go, right? So I think it's good to have the skill to do it, if necessary, to fall back on that. But at the same time, make marketing and the brand so fucking awesome that most of it is just taking orders.
Dude, I agree with everything you said. I think it's just, for me, again, it's just something to puzzle on and think about. Mm-hmm. The question is, where in that middle, and it's not middle, it's small businesses, where in that small business range, it's really the 8 to 28 to 30 is when it exists. Yeah. It's like, when do we do that? And I know it's out of scarcity because I've dealt with people that are like, well, I don't want to commit to this fat check because I don't know they're going to perform. Yeah. Because the reality is we're putting the stress on the salespeople to perform instead of the marketing department, which can be very difficult. I mean, right? Like, and I'm not saying that one is necessarily better than the other. I just think it's very fascinating for all of us to look at this and recognize that at the highest level, it is a team effort. There is no commission involved. Yeah. And everyone is just
Ideally both. Ideally marketing crushes and sales. That's the whole thing.
Right.
Well, actually, Seth Godin talks about this in Purple Cow, one of my all-time favorite books. It's like, if you want to sell easy and market easy, make the product really good. Yeah. So again, like it's like the three-pronged spear. And I've seen, this is so funny too. You've seen this come and go because you're in the scene for a very long time. All right, take off your tinfoil hat here for a second. I know this episode is really awesome with my buddy Adam, but if you want to support this podcast and if you want me to continuously drop high-quality guests for you for free, please right now drop a like and a comment on YouTube. Tell me how awesome I am or how much you hate me. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or iTunes, give us a 5-star rating. This will help us rank higher, and that will eventually revert back to you because it allows me to get you more awesome podcast guests here entirely for free. So I appreciate the hell out of you. And now back to the episode. There's always waves that come where it's like a new fancy sort of industry emerges. Right now it's AI, for example, right? And
it was NFTs.
It was NFTs, exactly. Yep. And there's like a time and space where it's really easy to sell. So a lot of products come out that have only one of these three things really good. A lot of offers come out that only have one of these three things really dialed in. They either have only the sales really dialed in, marketing is shit, sales is really good, and product is shit, or the product is really good, or the marketing is really good, right? And then over time, they die out. As the hype goes down, all these companies die out, and all the market share goes to the 2, 3, 4, 5 top companies that have all three dialed down.
Dude, you're going to love this, by the way. Do you know, I knew NFTs would fail.
Yeah.
And I know that AI is going to succeed.
Yeah.
But I know why.
Okay, let's hear it.
Do you know about the tulip boom?
No.
Okay. So this is...
In the Netherlands, in Holland?
Yes.
Somehow I've heard about it.
So we're going to talk about two different flowers. We're going to talk about tulips and we're going to talk about lotuses. And I'm going to share how nerdy I am.
Love it.
So the tulip concept was at some point, I think it was the Netherlands, somebody decided that to have tulips meant you were wealthy. And having tulips was a status. If you had tulips in your house, you were wealthy. And people started carrying tulips around and like being like, look at my tulips, right?
How did you get that message out of tulips are wealthy?
Dude, again, I haven't looked into the origin of it, but it was probably that there wasn't too many tulip seeds around and they were expensive, right? And so someone got them, was like, I've got tulips in my house. And someone's like, look at me too, right?
Love it.
And maybe there was some kind of propaganda going on. I don't know. Yeah. But the point is, it's a historical thing you can read up on, which will be more important when we talk about the lotus in a moment. So the tulips, I suppose people started realizing, well, you can just grow them. And so a bunch of entrepreneurs are like, we're going to get rich selling tulips, right? And they started. I love it. But there's now tulip farms everywhere.
Yeah.
And now everyone's got a tulip.
Yeah.
Tulips are no longer an indicator of how rich you are.
Yeah.
And you got all these people bankrupt because they've sold everything to buy tulips, right? You get it?
Yeah.
That's what's going on. All right. So Richard Garfield is the founder of the game Magic the Gathering, which
sweet.
I'm obsessed with. And there is a number of podcast episodes where people talk about this. He studied economics at school, I believe, and he was obsessed. When he created his card game, he wanted to make sure that it did not end up like the tulip fad. Magic the Gathering is now 30 years old, I think, give or take. It's been going on a very long time. And what's amazing about it is that the cards from the original set still have value today.
Wow.
Specifically, the Black Lotus, which is known as the rarest of all the Magic cards. Do you know how much a Black Lotus costs?
Hold on a second. Which one is the one that that rapper bought for $2 million? The ring?
That's the one.
Game?
That's the one ring. That is Magic the Gathering.
Oh, okay.
They purposely created that one to prove that they could do this.
Okay. Is that more expensive than the Black Lotus?
That one is because there's one.
Okay.
The Black Lotus, you could just open a pack and find one back in the day.
How many are there?
Well, it's complicated. No one exactly knows because somebody tried to buy them and corner them and his house burnt down many years ago. Yeah, and so
I wonder why.
There's not many. Or maybe that was a propaganda rumor to make, right? Who knows?
Yeah.
But the point is, if you went out today to try and buy one, what do you reckon they can fetch?
$2 million?
Yeah, more like $100,000.
Okay, it's pretty good still.
It's pretty good, but they're not wild, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure someone's probably selling them for $2 million, but they're not that crazy, but they're expensive. But they've had their value for 30 years.
Yeah.
The tulip craze lasted maybe a year.
Because you couldn't replicate them.
Because they had a use outside of its own inherent value.
Oh, okay.
This was huge. The card that Post Malone bought, the One Ring,
Post Malone, that was him.
has a use outside of its own inherent value. The problem with NFTs is there was no use outside of its own inherent value. They could have. And they should have, because NFTs were originally designed as a ticketing system. The idea being, if I'm going to buy a ticket to a concert, you can't scout my ticket because it comes with an NFT to prove that my ticket is real. That was the whole concept, is blockchain for events, right? But at some point, people were like, no, the image is the image. But the image, the NFT had no value in and of itself. So when NFTs first came out, I said, this is a tulip. This is a tulip scenario, and it's really bad. In the original .com boom of the early 2000s, everyone was buying websites. We're going to buy a website. We're going to buy a website. And I was like, what does the website do? Oh, no, you don't understand. You can make loads of money. You go, what does it do? It doesn't do anything. That was the bust.
But what about art? The fucking Mona Lisa doesn't do anything.
Okay, we can talk about art separately, because there is an entire discussion around art.
Because that's the whole argument behind NFTs. It's like, oh, it's digital art, right? You own ownership.
There's a massive difference.
I'm not a fan of NFT, by the way.
No,
I just
I love it.
The argument.
I love it, and we're going to go there as well. I promise we're going to go there. So when something has a use outside of what it actually is, its value can sustain. The Black Lotus can be used in a tournament of Magic the Gathering, and you can win actual money. So the Black Lotus will always have value as long as the tournaments still continue. As long as they keep making cards, there will always be value. And this was Richard Garfield's insane genius by bringing an economy to a game. NFTs had no economy because there was no value. You bring up the point of art. So art has a couple of inherent things to it. Art thing number one, old art typically is the only art that has value. Because the artist has passed away, you are unable to get another one. So it has value from a nostalgic point of view, right? People remember that time period. And nostalgia, people will buy a nostalgia. You can see a lot of 1980s toys are being re-released nowadays. And people with lots of money, like there's a $1,000 transformer that actually transforms.
No shit.
Yeah, there's an Optimus Prime. You push, it's a robot, and it actually transforms itself. Yeah, and like it can walk. It's like one of those little toy robots, but it can turn into a truck and drive.
Brawler and costed $1,000.
Yeah, and it's like $1,200 or whatever, right? So
I'll buy that shit.
See, nostalgia, right? Or like on my wall at home, I have the Thundercat sword, like the Eye of Thundera.
Did you see the Back to the Future DeLorean that is like floating? It's like a real replica, but smaller.
Dude, I'm not wearing them today, but I've got a pair of $25,000 sneakers that are replicas of Ripley when she got into the power loader in Aliens.
No way.
And everyone who's watching this and seeing how excited
you gotta send me a photo of
yeah,
that.
sure.
I'm such an alien nerd.
Dude, oh my God. Okay. Separate conversation.
We have like 6 threads that we need to.
Okay. I literally, I have an entire speech I give about my $25,000 sneakers because I wear them. They're not on display.
Yeah. Dude.
I wear them. And so there's a whole talk about, again, there's no point in having something if you don't use it. Right? This is the point. That's where the real value is, in the use of it, right? There's one thing to save up 25 grand, leave it on a shelf, and it's savings. There's another thing to spend 25 grand and use it.
Yeah, fuck
right?
yeah.
I wear the shoes, right? Because I can use it. So when something has use, the value extends beyond just what it is.
Yeah.
Now, there is another use of art that has to be mentioned. And this is, a lot of people know this as an art hack. How do you value a piece of art?
It's to save taxes. People tell their value friend, hey, can you value this random piece of art for $10 million? And then you donate it, and then it's a $10 million tax write-off.
Let's play a real game.
Okay.
I have a piece of art in my house.
Okay.
What I have is a piece of art that... do you know who Frank Frazetta is?
No.
Okay, so Frank Frazetta is arguably the person that invented science fiction art. He did the original imagery for Conan, the Conan comics. He did Fire and Ice, the movie was based on his works. Frank Frazetta is like a very famous artist. He has a piece called Death Dealer, and there are a number of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I believe they got up to 6. Death Dealer 6, if memory serves, sold for approximately $3 million at auction. No, $5 million at auction the last time it was sold. And I'm going off of memory here, so please don't hate me, internet, but I think it's about $5 million. So $5 million is what it sold for. We don't need an appraiser for that. Someone paid $5 million for it. Okay. Frank Frazetta sold that piece, or it was sold, because they needed money. But Frank Frazetta Jr. made a duplicate for his dad. In my house is that duplicate. And on the back, it says, like, for my dad, made here, hung in blah, 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 blah. It's a duplicate. So my question to you is, how much is my piece worth? It's the only one in the world.
And it's to his dad.
It's to his dad with the writing on the back and his writing.
I mean, it's got to be more than the original he sold for 5.
We don't know. That's the point. So that's the beauty about art is until someone buys it, I know what I paid for it.
What did you pay for it?
I'm not going to say.
Just
but I'm taking
point it with
offers.
your
No, I'm
fingers.
joking. Yeah. But it was not cheap.
Okay.
Right? But so I know what I paid for it, but I will never tell anyone what I paid for it because the value in that art piece is the story that this is the piece that he made for his dad because his dad got rid of the other piece. Can you imagine a kid, and like I've got 5 kids, being like, "Hey, Dad, I know you didn't want to get rid of your work.
Yeah.
I duplicated it.
How did you get to buy it if it was for his dad?
I have insomnia,
Okay.
and
I mean, it's another thread that
yeah.
I love it, man.
and
Let's hear it.
at night sometimes I can't sleep, and there is a Frank Frazetta museum in Philadelphia. And when I'm sleepy, I randomly browse the internet instead of scrolling through
and
reels.
buy $1 million art like everybody
And-
else.
and
Like all the normal people.
And there
He's
was a
just
ch-
like us.
There was
Adam
a
Lyons.
chat window that was like chat live with one of our representatives. So I'm like, hello, and the person responded, and I was like, I don't think you're a bot. And they're like, I am not a bot. And I was like, that's cool. Who are you? And they go, my name is Lori. Shout out to Lori. And I'm like, not Lori Frazetta, Frank Frazetta's daughter. And she's like, yeah.
Oh
And
my God.
and I'm like, oh my God. And so I just start showing. I've got some original Robert Rodriguez reproductions. He did professional photos. He was friends with Frank of Frank's work. I've got it in my house. Like I'll take pictures and show you. And so like, I've got all this works. And I was like, but I'm missing some. And I was like, do you have them? And she's like, we don't. And I was like, oh no, like, I really want to complete my collection. They're like, we don't have them. I'm so sorry. Because I can't buy the paintings. I can only afford the photography of the paintings, but it's still limited edition. It's made by Robert Rodriguez. It's great. And she says to me, but I do have some other limited edition things. Are you interested? And at 2:00 in the morning, I'm like, yeah, I am interested. And she goes, well, I've got this collection of 3 pieces of art that his son, Frank Frazetta Jr., made for him.
Her brother.
No, her husband. So she's sister-in-law.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I bought them in the middle of the night, and yeah, I bought them from the museum. So yeah, that's my story. And yeah, Lori Frazetta is on my Facebook. If anyone doubts the story, she will validate it. But again, it's beautiful because what are they worth? It's hard, and I have actually sent them to a few different appraisers, and the numbers have different zeros at the end. Some are like, oh, it's only this, and some are like, it's this. The reality is, and I hope this doesn't happen anytime soon, but if Frank Frazetta Jr. passes away, the value will go through the roof. The value is in the story. In fact, just by talking about it on this podcast, that story is now increased the value of my art, right? Which is great.
That's the reason why we did the podcast.
It's the
by the
whole
way.
reason.
It's
I told Max
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I'll buy him dinner if it sells.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I'm joking. I would not sell these things. I love them. But like, and again, I display them on my walls, like they're there. Like I love these pieces of art. And yes, I have guns. I just suddenly realized I told the whole world what's on in my house. But the reality is that's why art's so different. Real art, NFTs. Okay, you've got the art, but I can also have the art. And there's no way of telling our two arts
take
apart.
a screenshot from
Right, exactly, unless you prove the blockchain. In which case, the art isn't the image, the art is the blockchain code attached to the art, because we can both have the same image.
Yeah.
It's just, the question of what's behind the image that is where the value is. And because that value has no use outside of it authenticating that it itself is itself, there's no value. Whereas, the dot-com boom initially, URLs weren't worth anything. When people learn, take URL, build a business on it, make it revenue generating, and the better URLs come better in search terms, because search wasn't a thing initially, not anywhere near where it is now. Once search terms became valid for money, suddenly URLs were worth a lot of money, right? And so like some of my URLs are like in the hundreds of thousands, the value of them, because it's the fact that if someone searches that term, the URL becomes worth a lot, the value. Same with AI. There is inherent value in AI because it helps us be productive.
100%.
NFTs don't have it. So again, talking about strategy, one of my favorite strategies is when someone says, I got this cool new thing, which is back to the original thread, I look at it and go, does it have value beyond it and of itself?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, I know it's going to flop. And it's just a matter of time before it collapses.
which kind of brings us back to the chicken without a head point again. It's like a bunch of people like, oh, this NFT thing, maybe we can make money with it. Oh, let's make random Bored Apes. Let's just pay a bunch of social media people so they hype it, so we then make fucking money with it. It's not like people came up with it. It was always like, oh, it's there. How can we capitalize on it? Opportunistic approach. Let's go make some money. And then at some point, the house of cards just fell apart. But here's the interesting thing. Crypto, in general, was originally created to actually have practical value. Bitcoin was created by Satoshi, whatever his name was, Matamoka, whatever. He's like, okay, well, I want people to pay with that. But then it's somehow, the purpose of it got twisted into like people now are just buying it to have it increase in value and they're holding it. Meaning, technically, it has practical application, but practically nobody or very few people are actually using it for that. So with that argument in place, what is your take on crypto?
There will be a digital currency. It will be the digital dollar. I don't know when. I don't know how. And no one's phoned me and told me.
Okay, but you're waiting for someone. By the way, when they tell you, forward it to me.
This is where they heard it first. Here's how I know we have to have a digital dollar in our lifetime. It's no question. If you understand anything about currency, you'll recognize that once upon a time, the dollar was considered the gold standard.
Yeah.
It was backed directly to
gold,
right? But really, it was backed directly to silver. The idea being a dollar was a silver coin. Do you have any silver coins?
No.
I'm obsessed. I got a whole bunch.
No shit. What aren't you obsessed with? I love it,
Dude,
man.
yeah, I'm obsessed. I got a whole bunch of silver coins. Fun fact, silver, when you hit it, it rings like a bell. It's beautiful. It's got this very unique sound. Man, I kind of want to bring you to my house and show you something. Anyway, separate thing. I know,
we should so down.
We have to do this. All right, so the silver coin has two values. If you sell it for the value of the dollar that it is, it's worth $1.
Yeah.
I can take a silver coin and I can go and buy a Hershey's chocolate bar for $1 with it. But the silver is worth $32. So you wouldn't sell it for the value of the coin, you would sell it for the value.
Yeah.
Now here's a fact that I learned the other day. If I took an amount of gold back 200 years ago that could have bought a house, and I have that same amount of gold today, the same weight, it can still buy a house.
Yeah, that's why I love gold, man.
But think about that.
That's why I bought a shit ton of it.
But think about that. It's not because gold has gone up. It's because the dollar has gone down. The gold is worth the same. The gold is still a certain amount of gold that could buy you a 3-bedroom house 200 years ago, can buy you, give or take, 3-bedroom house, maybe 4-bedroom, but still. But the dollars back then could not buy a house. Like if you had a whole bunch of silver dollars back then, and you kept them today and you tried to buy the dollar value, you wouldn't be able to do it. The silver value, you could, right? So the point is, when we get into credit card machines, this is, again, when you see everything as strategy, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
You know when you check out a credit card machine, right?
Yeah.
Have you noticed that people start asking for a tip?
Yeah.
In anywhere.
Which is insane, by the way. This is not in Europe.
Do you know why?
Like you go to the grocery store and it's like, you want to give a tip? And you have to, in front of the guy, like, 0 tip.
And then it says, do you want to donate to charity?
Exactly. And you're like, no. And the person is looking at you as you're doing it. And I guess they put it in because they realize, well, the motherfucker, the average person is going to give a fucking tip.
That's not the reason. It's the credit card processing company. They get paid a percentage off the total amount.
Oh.
Yeah. So if you increase your amount by 20%, the credit card company gets their payment up by 20%.
Yeah.
Somehow, some credit card, again, it's headless chickens. Some random person is like,
Opportunistic.
hey, every penny we get them to check out here, you know, it's like, do you want to order next week's groceries? Click here and we'll have the order ready for you next week, right?
Yeah.
Every single upsell, because that's what, and dude, I got told that by a merchant processor who's a friend of mine because I didn't figure it out. I was like, oh, it's so annoying. And he goes, well, it makes us more money.
Yeah.
I'm like, explain.
Yeah.
The minute I understood that, suddenly I'm like, oh my God, there is a deeper purpose. So now let's check this. If I have $50 as and people have spoken about this before. I'm going to share something that other people know, but we'll relate it. If I've got a $50 note and I give you $50 to buy your services, you also have a $50 note. If you then buy my services and give me back a $50 note, I now have a $50 note. If we did the same transaction via credit card, eventually it would be worth zero.
Yeah.
Because of the percentages coming out in merchant fees.
Yeah.
So the dollar, unfortunately, isn't as profitable as a digital dollar would be. Because every digital transaction, somebody can take a piece of it. Somebody can ask, do you want a tip? Do you want to give a percentage? Hey, we're taking fees for that.
That's why they want to get rid of it.
So, considering a lot of countries in the world are saying they want to move away from the dollar, we're seeing you've got like Russia, Brazil,
All
I
the
think.
BRICS.
Right, exactly, right. They've got that entire unit that are moving away from the dollar. Historically, America has managed to maintain power by controlling the economy around the world by making them all use the dollar. No country right now uses a digital currency instead of a physical one. Strategically, no one's told me, but strategically, if I was in charge, I'd be the first country to have a cryptocurrency as my predominant currency and get everyone to sign up to that.
And strategically, if I was a real big asshole, I would then say, okay, now all of you guys and girls have digital money. If you don't behave, we're going to take that money. We're going to freeze it. Because if you have a physical dollar and you're a criminal or you're paranoid, you put it in your pillow, right? Nothing we can do about it. But digital money, we can always freeze and get access to. Oh, you know what? Let us link it to a social currency system. We're then saying a social credit system like China has, right? You can't use certain public transport anymore if you have a low credit score, low social score. And now we're really fucked.
Yeah, as an individual, yes. They wouldn't be able to use that across countries. That wouldn't benefit them. But the benefit, the way you sell it to other countries is you say, by the way, when you use our currency system, you are able to shut off an individual's inside your country's currency. Now, there's people listening to right now saying that's never going to happen. Those are the same people that told me there will not be a quarantine. Those are the same people that said no one's going to get us to wear masks. No one's going to keep us indoors. And there'll be someone say, and I didn't. Absolutely. You probably didn't. You, one individual, didn't.
Yep.
But the majority did. And in order to win at this game, you don't need the individual. You just need the majority because we've already seen that the majority will police the minority. And actually, when we talk about social credit, the reason that... Do you know who invented that system, by the way?
No.
It was invented by Blizzard.
No shit.
Yeah, the founders of World of Warcraft. So,
oh, man.
Here's why. If you remember, many, many years ago, people were so addicted to playing World of Warcraft that they were not eating. Because Blizzard hired psychologists to calculate the exact rate of drop to ensure that somebody would be most addicted to playing their game.
The loot drop, you mean?
The loot drop. It was all calculated. And they had to weaken their algorithm because it was dangerous. So, there's a lot of videos about this online. When it was proposed, and again, I don't think necessarily China proposed it, but I do believe that some very smart entrepreneurial people, because this is typically what happens in the world, proposed it and said, hey, you know what if we took this psychological system, we connected it to Alibaba for shopping, and we created a social credit. Initially, it was an opt-in. It was, if you're really, really good and you have high social credit, you're going to get discounts, your stuff's going to arrive early, and there'll be more stock for you.
Oh, shit.
And this goes back to, I think 2014. There was a video. If you type in Sesame credit into YouTube, you'll find somebody's got a video on it, and that person's welcome. He's got a whole bunch more views. But it literally talks about how it was rolled out, and then they added the penalty afterwards. Oh. And there's whole reasons why somebody would do this because, again, objectively, it's just a better system to control the population.
Yeah.
You know, rather than saying you have to go home because you're occupying this area, it's a lot better to say this area is contaminated. For your own safety, please go home. Most people, the weakest links, right? They will leave, the weakest kink in the chain, and then you end up with this small group left. And you go, well, you guys are assholes. You endangered everybody. Now we can arrest you.
Exactly.
We're arresting less people. It's less pressure on the system. And this is just a better system. And you know, if you apply logic to anything that you're seeing, we can get rid of this whole idea about a conspiracy and just understand.
Yeah.
Look, I'll give you another example. I've got a lot of military friends and clients, okay? I don't know if this has ever happened, but I want you to imagine you are a 4-star general in any random military in the world, but you've never been to war. And you're at dinner with your family, and you've just got your 4th star. And your family turn around to you and say, well, you're not really a general, are you? And you're like, what do you mean? They go, well, you've never been to war. We live in times of peace. You've not actually done your job. And you go, we're not at war because I've made it. You know, that's the job. And you go, says you just paid too much. How long before you start thinking, oh, maybe I'll just do a little war? Right? Now, what I know about human beings, for you to believe how many generals there are in the world, that there isn't a general out there somewhere that doesn't have somebody saying, you've never actually been in a war, you don't know. And it's only when we start thinking about real life scenarios that are human lower down in the chain is going to have to face, and is suddenly in a position of decision making. And I hope that every general in the world is so ethical, they are so people first and not self-serving, that they would never, ever go to war for pride, ego, to prove a point. I mean, I hope. But you don't know. And considering we see, right, what is it? Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Just what I know about human beings, I find it hard to believe that there isn't a general out there at some point in our lifetime that was like, no, trust me, this will be a quick war. Because they really just wanted to go home and be like, I did it. Right?
Now, Adam, you're talking about these things because you're excited about the strategy behind it and the application, real life application of all these concepts. But that sounds fucking scary to me, especially things like social credit system, and you saying this is going to happen for sure.
Not the social credit system for sure. I don't know if America will ever take that up. And I'm
That's
just being
good.
real, because America is very pro-freedom, right? Like very pro. Look at this. Ukraine had no guns. When Russia invaded, they were an anti-gun nation. I wonder how Ukraine feels about guns now. You ever notice that the whole anti-gun debate has kind of gone quiet since Russia invaded Ukraine?
Yeah.
That's because you've got this entire country that was against guns, that was scrambling and begging for guns because they didn't have any. What is it? Japan said the hardest part about conquering America is that behind every single rock is an American with a gun, right? And that is the reality. No one's going to conquer America. It's nothing to do with the American military.
Yeah.
It's everything to do with the crazy...
Depends on if you come into California or over Texas. There's a big difference.
I promise you there are still guns. Again, in LA, sure. But you start going to the farmlands.
Right?
And there the guns are again, right?
Yeah.
Because Americans love their guns. Like that's just how it is. Do you like zombie movies?
I love zombie movies.
You ever see the original Dawn of the Dead? Not the remake, the original one.
What year is it?
Are we talking 80s? Maybe 84?
No.
So it's worth watching because there's this great scene where they show the zombie apocalypse destroying the whole world. And then they show Texas or somewhere, and it's just a bunch of guys drinking beer and shooting zombies. And they're singing and laughing, listening to music. Because to them, life hasn't changed.
Yeah.
It's so rural, they can see the zombies coming a mile off. Like, cool. And there's like loving life, right?
Yeah.
And it just goes to show you, like that kind of is how America is. America is a very unique place because of this. But ultimately, what it comes down to, and I really think we all need to be aware of it, is that humans love the idea that there is some big plan. Who made us? Why are we here? What's going on? The government knows best. The reality is, it's just a bunch of individuals. And those individuals...
Just a bunch of apes without fucking hair.
Right? And they're mostly self-serving. And they've all got egos. And they're all worried about...
Nobody knows what the hell is going on. They're all just trying to get the best.
Right? How do they get their bonus? How are they going to get a pay rise? How can I do a good job? How can I get my next promotion? By just being good. And there are absolutely some very altruistic people in the world. But I think for us to believe that all the people in power are altruistic is insanity. The math just doesn't add up like that. And most of the time, all you can do is hope for the best, prepare for the not best.
The problem even is with the people in power is that the system of politics is so fucked up that every average person doesn't want to do it. Like, if you really look at it, like, the only people who put themselves out there to be elected, whether it's for president, for senate, for fucking mayor, you gotta be psycho to really think this is great. You're not making a lot of money, although, there's this whole debate of like making money on the stock market.
Yeah, exactly.
But for the average person, it's like you're continuously under scrutiny. You have to continue. Like, once you're in power, you have to make sure you stay in power. Everybody digs up everything about your past. So it's like the whole idea is the whole system has gotten so bad that you got to be such a fucking psycho to even think this is great. And then you get to power, and of course, the only people that are in power are the ones psycho enough to even have pursued that in the first place.
Well, think of it this way. You're hiring for a job, okay? And you've got two different candidates going to the job. You've got one guy who spent his whole life studying education. And he's really, really good at education.
But he can't sell himself.
The other guy has spent his whole life studying how to get a job as an education expert.
Exactly.
Doesn't really know anything about education.
Exactly.
Of the two candidates, the one who's going to get the job is the one who's practiced more, not for the job, but for the interview. They get the job. And that's what you see in politics. The experts who actually dedicate their life to knowing something are never going to get picked because they know nothing about politics
That's the problem.
and how it works. That is literally how the system is built. So you are always going to end up with, and we talk about this in strategy. When I'm playing any game, I don't use the strategy that is generically most likely to win. I use the strategy that is most likely to win in that particular game against that particular person. I'll never forget, me and my son, we sword fight a lot. My son's 14 years old now. And the last sword fighting event that we went to, there was a Marine, 6'4". My son is shorter than me. I'm 6 foot, so he's like, 5'10" probably.
Still taller than me, by the way.
That's right,
FYI.
Okay,
How old are you? Your 15-year-old son?
Yeah, 14.
14-year-old son. Love it.
And this guy weighs 230 pounds, the military guy. And he is the combat trainer for knife and bayonet fighting in the Marines, in their barracks, their fort. And my son just does sword fighting with me. At the last event, we're all packing up, and my son challenges people to fight all the time. All he wants to do is fight with a knife. It's his favorite thing. With a sword. And the guy said to him, I want a knife fight against you, to my son. And my son went, absolutely. That's all he wants. And he goes, but with a knife, not a sword. My son's like, no problem. My son does not fight with a knife. I've never trained him with a knife, only with a sword. So my son's got a knife. And they go toe-to-toe. And the guy said, we're going to use Marine rules. And my son's like, what's that? And he goes, single hits don't count. He goes, it's torso. We're going for killing blows. That's all that's going to count. So not only has my son never fought with a knife, my son has never used these rules. Well, considering one of them is a professional teacher and the other one is a 14-year-old kid, you would presume that the combat Marine would win. They went 50-50 on their duels. It was as a dad, one of the most proud moments. Like this guy, he sent a picture to me and he said, I told my Marines that, he's like, I'd rather go into battle with this kid than half of you. I was just like blown away. And afterwards, somebody went up to my son and said, how did you do it? And my son said to him and to me, he's like, well, my dad taught me you play the game, but also you play the opponent. And he goes, this guy was taller than me, so I became smaller. And I ducked down, and I increased his reach that he needed because of the hypotenuse. We study it in school. If you've got an angle, that angle there, if he's lower, the angle's longer. Yeah. And so his reach was being wasted going down instead of across. Whereas my son was already level with his legs and could come up and get his stomach. And it was exactly the right move because my son not only played the game to win, but played the opponent too. And so in any system where you've got politics or something, you see it all the time. They're playing the opponents.
Yeah.
They're attacking each other.
Yeah.
And they're attacking the system. But if I said to anyone today, give me 5 policies that Kamala Harris is going to do, and give me 5 policies that Trump's going to do, and I think most people who have the right to vote and will be voting in the American election cannot list 5 policies from either candidate. And that is scary. That's terrifying. Because the power is in the people to vote, which is understandable, but they're not being educated. No one, especially not the candidates, are educating them because you don't win by educating. You win by playing the game and playing the opponent. And that is, unfortunately, how strategy works.
And it's funny because if you look at the older elections, like Obama versus, what was it, Mitt Romney?
Yep.
They were so much more civilized when they had these discussions, when they had the big panels, the debates. But somewhere, I think it was really like, it must have been Trump that started that of like, oh shit, that works.
There's
works
actually,
much better if I just call him Sleepy Joe. People love that shit.
There's precedent going back even further. Like some of the older presidents, they would make like jokes. In fact, actually, you've got the animals for each party. The elephant and the donkey was originally an attack by the other party, and so like that's where that came from. So it has been around. But what's happened is, as always, the more you play a game, the better you get at identifying what makes you win.
Yeah.
Same with you. You spent 2 years to learn cold ads. Thought you'd do it in 2 months, but you still nailed it faster than most people. But what happens is you start going, this is the thing that works. Do more of this, because that is an optimized system. And what we're seeing in politics right now is an optimized system becoming more and more optimized, where it makes more sense to attack than it does to share what you're going to do.
But it's also, and this is kind of key, the nuance to it, it's an optimized system that is optimized to the current state of the American people.
Which is playing to the people and to the game.
Exactly. Amen to that.
Yeah.
Because if the American people would be less prone to drama, less prone to what's it called, journalism that is only focused on headlines and shock, the American people would be not as easily entertained by headlines and would be instead, quote unquote, more old school. This shit wouldn't even fly.
But that's human nature.
And by the way, yeah, exactly. I was going to say, it's not just American people, it's everybody.
Exactly,
it's us humans. We've been so brainwashed by the algorithms, by short-form gratification, by the illusion of we don't have time. Oh, I don't have time to read this fucking article. I only read the headline.
I'm going to be so controversial right now, and I'm so sorry. We were not brainwashed.
Ooh.
This is actually who we are as humans. Your chance of surviving goes up significantly if you're worried about bad things.
Oh.
So it is ingrained in us to be fearful of bad problems. You watch a movie where there's no drama and that will bomb at the box office.
Yeah.
There has to be drama.
100%.
There has to be gossip. There has to be something going wrong. If you follow, the hero's journey, the monomyth story creation.
Yeah.
The hero has to lose their world.
Yeah.
And the world must be at stake.
Yeah.
These two things have to be real for it to be a good story, which is why everyone says, Harry Potter ripped off Star Wars. Have you heard that thing before?
I mean, yeah.
It's
Same
the same
with
story.
Lord of the Rings.
It's an orphan, grew up with aunt and uncle. A wizard tells him he has secret powers. Turns out that, right, you just follow. It's the same story. I'm telling Star Wars and Harry Potter at the same time because they both follow the hero's journey. It's not just those stories. We can take hundreds of the most popular stories about
Lord of the Rings, exactly the same shit.
Exactly. It's going to be the same thing over and over again, right? Hero grew up with his uncle, finds out that he's got magical powers, right? Like, this is ancient evil. He's got to go and deal with it, right? He's got to find some friends. The stories are the same. We can tell the same story over and over again because the algorithm, the story algorithm, which was developed, in Hollywood, because that was also propaganda, by the way, World War I, World War II. Think about it, because they wanted to be able to have a whole propaganda machine. If you watch German movies back then, you would have seen there's a lot of propaganda around that, right? So the film industry has always been a propaganda machine as it started optimizing, and they optimized what stories get the most views, what stories do the best. And unfortunately, humans are designed to observe danger, to care about it, and to want to predict the outcome of it, because that's what keeps you alive and has kept you alive for hundreds of thousands of years. We're not brainwashed. And I know, it's like I'm the most anti-conspiracy theorist.
Exactly.
It's
that's
just
what
practical. Of two humans, the human that is like, man, maybe there's a lion in that bush, and the human that's like, there's no lion in that bush. If there's a lion in the bush, only one survives, right? And I always try and think logically whenever I look at life. I'm like, what is really happening here? And what is really happening is we're going to care about the drama. We're going to care about the danger.
And I love that opinion because it's based on opportunistic humans rather than the shadow government is out to catch you.
Yeah.
It makes life a lot less worrisome. It shows you that you as an individual have actually much more power than you think. Yeah. Because you, for example, a great example, you peek behind the curtains, you understand the logic, the connections between each points, you pass that on to me, to the viewer, to your family. So now you create, if you want to be like that, you're creating a whole new slew of humans on a micro scale that peeks behind the curtains and knows how to play the game and play the opponent and therefore win. And now that gets passed on. And if you want to be utopian, overall, we're creating a society that grows alongside with that, both logically as well as from their character, as well as spiritually, arguably. And that's how we grow as humans, and that's how we stay alive, literally.
Yeah, and I'm far from perfect, right? And I think that's like I'm totally flawed, right? I don't fit the box, but I am happy. And I'm not just happy, I'm not really worried about the state of the world ever. because I can kind of see why it's happening. Do I know that for a fact? No. But I think it's a pretty good educated guess.
It's pretty logical.
Like, right, exactly. Like, I like to think, when I first moved to this town, right, so we're in, like, this building here, right? It's a building that I own. I bought it during COVID. And a fun fact, how I bought the building, I was renting another building down the road for a shop. And then there was an announcement that Elon Musk was going to move to Bastrop. And everyone screamed, went, yay! And I went, no! And everyone's like, why are you sad? I was like, rent's going to go up.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm going to have to buy a building to lock in the value of rent. Because the business that I had at the time...
Again, logic.
It was just logic. I did the opposite of what everyone else did, because to me it was obvious. But if we go back 5 years earlier than that, why I even lived in this town? When I first came here, Bastrop, Texas, all my friends in Austin were like, you're an idiot. There's nothing out in Bastrop. It's the middle of nowhere. And I said, well, there's a few things out here. And they went, what? And by the way, anyone who wants, this is my advice for how to find properties that are going to blow up. My property is worth a lot more than it was when I first paid for it. When I first paid for it, it was so cheap, and it is worth millions today. And I bought it for less than $500,000, right? Here's the most fascinating thing. This area had two things going for it. It had an airport. The Austin airport is to the east of Austin. The number one thing in property is location, location, location. And of all the locations, what matters most? Transportation. And of all the transportation, what matters most? Airports. So you always want to look, where is the airport? And you want to be as close to the airport as possible, because that's how presidents come in. That's how celebrities come in. Airports matter. And everyone at the time in Austin was moving to the west of Austin because there's a lake. And so I look on a map and I see that Bastrop has a lake. And it's a pretty big one. I'm like, all right, so we have a lake and we have an airport. And then I looked for the most, at the time, the best golf resort and the biggest hotel. There's a 5-star Hyatt Regency to the east of the airport. So to me, it was obvious. There is a bunch of undeveloped land out to the east. It is the same amount of time to get from that undeveloped land to the airport as it is to go from North Austin to the airport. And so I'm like, this is a no-brainer. This is where everyone's going to come. And so I bought the property with people laughing at me, telling me I'm dumb, telling me I don't know what I'm doing about property. And I had no idea. Now, people call me up, you got lucky. Like, I was never lucky.
Motherfucker.
Yeah, I was never lucky. I planned for it. I knew this area would be good. That's why I doubled down on it. I own 2 ranches out here. I own multiple homes out here because I knew this was going to happen. And anybody can do that. You can just look at your little town. Like the town that I live in, I live just outside of Bastrop in a tiny little town. It doesn't have a bank. There'll be a bank there one day, but there isn't one today. And so again, opportunity, something I've already considered with some friends is I might open a bank.
Sick.
Because the first bank in a town is normally where everyone goes to get loans to build. And so I see that as a massive opportunity. I've seen it for a few years. I just haven't found the partner that I want to open a bank with. But I would absolutely open a bank in a town, providing it was the first bank. Because anyone who wants to build in that area, you want to drive 30 minutes to go to the bank, or you want to just go to the local bank that is named after the town, right? And there you go. These things are so, I know to me, so obvious. I mean, they've taken years for me to understand. But at this point, I think most of us would just live a much happier life if you could be like, okay, I work in this company. Not what would I idealistically do, but what I realistically do, you know, and what would somebody realistically do under pressure in that scenario? And you try and think that way, not like an evil person or a corrupt person, just a generic person. And you give them the credit or the benefit of the doubt of being human and making mistakes and not being perfect. And then you can kind of let that stuff go. And then you can start thinking, okay, well, what do I really want to do? And you start realizing that you'll be a lot happier browsing museums at night and seeing what cool art is out there in the world and randomly, you know, meeting pseudo celebrities or, you know, or spending some time, you know, building a Nerf gun arena with your kids, which is what I built my kids
Sick.
A few years ago. Yeah, they got their own Nerf gun arena.
That is so sick.
Yeah, and that's what we spend our time doing, you know, and it's a happier life.
I always say people rather live decades in a life that doesn't fulfill them than spending a fucking weekend by themselves in introspection to figure out what it is that they want out of life and how to get there. It's so insane.
Dude, you know what's funny? And I love that. I can't do either of those things. I cannot sit and do introspection. I know you're good at this stuff, by the way. And I always want to credit the whole internet with knowing this. This guy's a legend. Like, literally, like, sticking to his diet while traveling, I can't do that. Dude, every time I travel, I'm like, where's the Krispy Kreme donuts? Like, bro, just an inspiration. I don't know. I just feel like, I know you do podcasts. I just think people may not credit you enough. Like
Thanks, man.
You're awesome, right? And obviously I know you from, we're actual friends. Like we talk all the time. But I've known you from, from Real Social Dynamics when we were both working together there. And, everyone there totally respected not just you for what you did, but your business knowledge and just a great freaking guy, right?
Thanks.
And I love that you can do that introspection thing. I can't. For me, the only thing I care about is, none of us are going to get out of this life alive. And the only thing that truly matters is, are we happy while we're here? And I spend my entire life trying to make people around me happy as best I can. I don't always succeed, but I try to do my best. And then I make myself happy. And for most of the time, that means at the end of the day, I go home and I hang out with my kids and I play Magic the Gathering, or I play, we're playing a new game on the Xbox right now.
Fuck yeah.
Actually, the new Zelda came out, and so we've got that one where you play as Princess Zelda. So
Yeah.
But that's what my house is like. We cook fresh food. We try and use ingredients from the farm. We try and go to local farms. And if not, there is a very, very good import place that brings foods from all over the world, because obviously we're multicultural, so I love doing that. My partner's a chef. And so
beautiful.
We eat 5-star cuisine every day, like every meal. I have friends come over to visit, and they're like, this is just like you find in any restaurant. I'm like, yeah, it's an hour to drive to a restaurant. Like we bring it here, right? And that's life. And we have a karaoke machine at home, and that's what life's about. And life's so much better and happier when that's what you're trying to achieve, which is just great memories. And unfortunately, you got to remember that advertisers, especially on the news, make money every time you watch that and get sad. Every time you post on social media in an argument, you increase engagement, which helps them make more money. I mean, like if you really want to fight capitalism, really fight capitalism, and I like capitalism. If you want to fight it, the best thing you can do is don't engage in any of the drama and just focus on enjoying your life. If you truly love your life choices, then love them, and focus on that and just have just the best freaking life.
Mate, you're a legend. You're a main character, as I call it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you.
To wrap things up, how can people find you? How can they check your stuff out?
Dude, Instagram's going to be best. The gram, I've heard you say that a few times. I want to be cool and say the gram.
Let's
right,
go.
so it's at the Adam Lyons, Lyons. But if you follow me, you're going to get a mixture of dating, being a dad, business advice, and nerd stuff. Like if you watch, you'll see Dungeons and Dragons stuff. What I did want to tell you that you don't know is we've shifted recently, and we play the Aliens Dungeons and Dragons game.
Oh shit!
It's Dungeons and Dragons in the Aliens universe. We played it last night. Yeah, dude, it's so good.
Oh my god!
I'll send you a link to
send it.
It's really
I'm
good.
down.
It's a good game. Anyway,
well, it's been a pleasure to have you on, man.
Pleasure.
Cheers. GG.
Oh my God, Adam Lyons is a genius. And you know who else is a genius? AI. I've actually discovered a new way on how you can start, build, and automate your own coaching business and have AI do 80, in some cases even 90% of the work for you. It's been absolutely insane what's been going on in my company. I've been able to increase my profit margins and to automate vast amount of work for everyone. And I've also rolled this out to my clients, beginners, intermediate, and advanced, and the results have been off the hook. If you want in on this, if you want AI to help you start, build, and automate your coaching business 80 to 90%, then go ahead and book a call with us. This is a free introductory call. We'll hop on a call with you. We'll explain you more how that works. We'll look at your potential. We'll answer any questions you might have. maxtornow.com/call. Book your call there. Just takes you 30 seconds to fill out a quick questionnaire. Link is down in the description as well. maxtornow.com/call. Talk to you soon. Let's get you started.